Cheating is a terrible phenomenon from which no one can be immune. It can ruin several lives or even more. My wife resented me for a long time and then decided it was the perfect excuse to cheat on me in return, damaging not only her life, but mine as well. Karma showed itself in this situation. 5 disturbing days passed. After driving many miles, just 20 minutes after arriving home, I found myself sitting on the patio in my favorite chair. I was enjoying a cup of strong coffee and reflecting on my twins who were about to leave our home. Miranda and I had just experienced a journey that symbolized the beginning of our lives as an empty nester. It was an experience shared by thousands of other parents, but I was sure none of them felt as fulfilled as I did the moment Luke left for Georgia Institute of Technology. Atlanta was our first stop. There we rented a car. The next day we dropped our daughter Kelly off in Gainesville, where she began her college life at the University of Florida. We then traveled a few miles east to Daytona Beach to enjoy a well-deserved vacation. The next 3 days were filled with intimacy like we had never experienced in our entire marriage. Miranda's desires seemed unquenchable. The fact that we became parents at 18 meant that at 36 we were still full of vigor and energy. I can honestly say that by the end of those days, I had run out of energy as I sat and reminisced about pleasant moments with Miranda before showering and freshening up. I was startled when I heard the sound of a hairdryer, which usually signaled her getting ready for work or an important meeting. This was followed by the unfamiliar sound of her shoes beating a rhythm on the kitchen floor. She usually favored rubber shoes, house slippers, or went barefoot. Before I could even realize the detail, she called out to me, "Alan, honey, can you come and sit with me for a minute? I need to talk to you." Quickly getting up from my chair and picking up my empty mug, I replied, "I'll be right there, dear." As I entered the kitchen, I was surprised to see my wife sitting at the table in a fresh blouse and clean jeans. She looked beautiful as always. She poured me a fresh cup of coffee and set it down in front of her. Not realizing what was going on, I sat down in the indicated seat. "What's wrong, Mary?" I asked, taking a sip of my coffee. "I'm leaving you, Alan," she said calmly, pulling the divorce papers out of a large manila envelope. "You can look them over and sign them," she added. As she spoke, I was overcome with shock. I was at a loss for words and numb. This announcement completely stunned me. Despite my silence, Mary continued, "All the details are described in the documents. I don't demand anything from you. All the things I left in the house can be used at your discretion. Our savings and accounts have been divided or closed. I have canceled all joint credit cards. I have already informed the necessary parties of the change of address. Any further information can be relayed through my attorney. In addition, I have obtained a restraining order that eliminates the need for further contact after I leave. I have a new phone number and email address, and all previous accounts have been closed. Please refrain from involving the children or my parents. They are aware of the situation and will not help you," she concluded. "You're probably going to ask, so I'll clarify. I've been with Dan for the past 13 years, and I intend to make him my husband. Although I still care for you, Alan, my feelings for Dan are stronger. He has waited patiently and deserves my full commitment," Miranda said as she headed for the door. She grabbed Carrie's small suitcase that she had put there earlier. Without showing any emotion, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Sandy Thompson." After those words, she closed the door behind her, which marked the end of my interaction with Miranda for 16 months. My coworker Dan Roberts, whom I had considered a friend for the past 18 years, was also my working father. Miranda and Dan's wife Laura bonded during the pregnancy. They were kindred spirits. Laura at 22 and Mary at 18 are both close in age. Their daughter Cassie was born the day after Laura gave birth to twins. This meant that the two wives lay in adjacent hospital beds. Their initial friendship developed into a deep bond that made them inseparable. As a result, we husbands ended up together. The two families became so close that we often visited each other's homes on weekends, which was convenient since we lived only 2 blocks apart. Before our unexpected event that resulted in the birth of twins, Mary and I were planning to go to college. Mary's dream was to study business or business administration. I had a partial baseball scholarship and was majoring in math, though without a clear direction. That all changed when Mary informed me she was pregnant. This prompted me to give up my ambitions and find a job. Both our families were incredibly supportive, quickly organizing a wedding within 2 months. My parents, to whom I was born later in life, showered me with love and support, assuming they would remain childless. Miri had an older brother who was 10 years older than her. She had little contact with him. Tragically, he passed away in a car accident a year after she went to college. This prompted her parents to focus their attention on her, just as my parents did for me. As a wedding gift, they gave me the deeds to our family home as they planned to move south in anticipation of retirement. I took a job with a local insurance company. The job was going well, although the pay was modest. The commission structure allowed me to almost double my earnings. The downside was long hours, usually 12 hours, and rare weekends. Mary took on the role of part-time registrar while continuing her education mostly online. Her parents played a key role in supporting us, especially after the twins were born, willingly helping with childcare. 3 years later, I was honored as North Carolina Regional Salesperson of the Year. Our company, recently acquired by a national corporation, appreciated the recognition of achievement and awarded me a $2,500 bonus. I received an all-expense-paid trip to Washington, D.C., where our headquarters were located. The program included a gala dinner to determine the top salesperson of the year and 2 days of relaxation. Mary and I were looking forward to this vacation, which was to be our first solo vacation since the birth of the twins. However, shortly before we left, Luke fell ill with whooping cough, followed by Kelly. Despite this misfortune, Mary advised me to enjoy the trip. I arrived about an hour before the gala dinner began, which gave me plenty of time to check in and inform the organizers that I would not be accompanied by my spouse. After getting ready, I showered, shaved, and put on my rented tuxedo. I found my assigned seat at the table and found myself sitting next to Sandy Thompson from our Little Rock office. Although most of the attendees were over 30 years old, Sandy was only a year older than my 21 years, and this was her first full year with the company. I had only had a few beers in my life prior to this event, but here was an open bar with free drinks. I had a couple glasses of wine during dinner when the awards were announced. I was stunned to learn that I was the winner of the Vendor of the Year award. I was presented with a trophy and a check for $10,000. When I returned to my desk, I discovered that I had been sent a bottle of champagne courtesy of my superiors. Honestly, from that point on, the rest of the night turned into a blur. I awoke at 5 the next morning, lying next to an impressively naked Sandy Thompson. I was horrified and quickly went back to my room, packed my things, and headed home 20 minutes later. Mary was completely stunned when I got home 4.5 hours later. Her demeanor changed dramatically, however, when 10 minutes later I admitted that I had gotten drunk and spent the night with another woman. She didn't ask anything else except the other woman's name, and then immediately announced that she was going to stay with her parents for a few days. She packed a small bag and left me with the kids for 3 days. She avoided my calls and refused to see me on Tuesday after taking the kids to daycare. When she returned home, she acted as if nothing had happened. Any attempt to discuss the matter was thwarted with a warning that if I ever brought it up again, she would leave with the kids and never come back. We went to bed that night, but there was no tenderness. It took many months for the intimacy to return, but eventually I honored her request. We never spoke of the incident again. The following year, Mary earned a degree in business. She set her sights on finding a job that would allow her to utilize her education. Our friendship with Dan and Lisa continued to flourish. We spent every weekend together, as long as work commitments didn't interfere with either Dan or me. Despite this, the girls continued to see each other regularly, although things were different now. They moved 15 miles closer to Dan's work. Lisa's parents also moved to the same neighborhood to provide space for their growing family. They took on the responsibility of looking after Cassie, giving Dan and Lisa additional freedom. As Dan's company experienced rapid growth, there was a need for an office manager and personal assistant. Mary was a perfect fit for the role. She impressed the managers during the interview process and thoroughly enjoyed her work. She thrived in the company and became an indispensable part of Dan's team, earning her the nickname Dan's work wife. This arrangement lasted for 5 years until an unexpected tragedy struck when Lisa passed away from a brain aneurysm. On the day she died, she visited me, as she often did when Dan and Mary had to travel. The loss was devastating for all of us, especially Dan. He was finding it difficult to cope alone, especially with the responsibilities of caring for his 11-year-old daughter. The solution was for Mary to spend a few hours 3 days a week after work. making sure everything was clean and organized, and cooking meals that could be easily reheated. At least that's what I was led to believe. 16 months later, as I walked out of the garage with the last box to load into the van, I noticed her car pulling into the driveway. It was the first time she'd been back since she mentioned wanting a divorce. She was definitely the last person I expected to see when she got out of the car. I greeted her. "Miranda, aren't you violating a restraining order by being here?" My tone remained even and neutral. This day was the last day we finalized our divorce. "How are you doing?" she asked. I shrugged. "Living the dream. Want some coffee?" Without waiting for her answer, I walked back toward the house. "That would be nice," she replied, following me. The house was almost empty except for a few boxes on the dining room table. The major appliances and one of the bedroom sets had been left to the new owners. The estate sale had gone rather well over the past few days. Everything that was left had been sent to the dump. A former neighbor's son volunteered to take care of it for me. The day before I handed over the keys, his wife and one of her friends also offered to help with the cleanup. There was only one birthday card left on the mantelpiece, a reminder of my recent 38-year anniversary, celebrated a couple days ago thanks to my office colleagues. They also gave me a good luck card, which I packed in my luggage. After 19 years with the company, leaving good friends there was inevitable, although it was a decision that had to be made. As we sipped our coffee, we found ourselves in the same seats we'd been in 16 months ago. "So what brings you here today?" I asked. "The kids got letters about you moving. Why didn't you just call them?" "Sending them a registered letter seemed unnecessary," my visitor remarked. "Actually, I called Kelly because I can't reach Luke," I replied. "Why can't you call Luke?" she asked. "I don't have his number," I sighed. "The kids don't really keep in touch with me," I added. I could tell by the look on her face that she didn't quite believe me. Resigned to proving my point, I reached for my phone lying on the table in front of me, unlocked it, and dialed Kelly's number. It rang 10 times on speakerphone before going to voicemail. Looking at her, I asked, "Would you mind calling her? She might be busy." Mary, apologizing, reached for the phone and dialed a number on the speakerphone. Kelly answered on the second ring. "Hi, Mom, how are you?" Cheerfully greeted Kelly. "I'm fine, honey. What are you and Cassie going to do?" "We're planning on going to the party later, so we're saving our energy," replied my daughter. "Have you heard from your father lately?" Mary interjected, throwing me a meaningful look. "Yes, I spoke to him last night. He mentioned talking to you and that you needed to catch up with us in about 10 minutes. I think he was planning on meeting Luke today," Kelly replied, ignoring the main question. My stomach clenched when she carelessly called Dan Dad. Mary sensed my discomfort and the slight pain it caused. I leaned back in my chair and looked up at the ceiling. "You mean Dan?" I asked. "Yeah, but he likes it when I call him Dad. Anyway, in 3 weeks he's officially going to be my daddy," my daughter grinned. In 3 weeks, my ex-wife was going to be remarried. Ironically, they even invited me to the wedding. "When was the last time you talked to your biological father?" Mary insisted. "Oh, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago." The laughter disappeared from her voice. I opened my call log and Mary could see all my attempts to call. None of my kids had contacted me since Mary left. "That's interesting because I'm sitting next to him right now and I saw him trying to call you just before I did," Mary said. "Oh, that was a pretty astute response," my daughter remarked, reminding me that Dan is her only father. "We'll talk later, young lady," Miranda ended the conversation, clearly frustrated. "Why don't you have Luke's number?" she asked. Dan made sure he got a new phone and number just hours after his old phone was stolen. She shrugged, not knowing what to answer. "Don't be too hard on them, they're programmed that way," she said. I pointed to my call log on my phone. "I'm no longer involved with them, and as you heard, I've been replaced," I admitted. Although it hurt her, it was the truth. "Since you left, I think I've talked to them for a total of 1 hour. I haven't even been in the same town as them since you left. I tried, believe me," I continued. "I even had box seats for the Braves opening day game. But Luke said he was busy. Only later did I find out that he and Dan, along with a couple other guys, got last-minute tickets. But hey, if that's what they want, I'm not going to force them." We sat quietly, lost in our own thoughts for a moment, before Mary turned the conversation around. "So you're moving in with your parents?" "Not exactly. I'm going to take care of my mom. She needs constant help right now," I replied. "Oh my God, what's going on with her? How is your dad doing?" she asked, tears welling up in her eyes. "She has late-stage Alzheimer's. Most of the time it's really hard on her. She can't remember anything. And about Dad, we buried him a little over 3 weeks ago. They said it was a heart attack, but I believe his heart just couldn't take it," I explained. "Oh no," my ex-wife sobbed. "How do you know it was a broken heart, and why didn't you contact us?" I did call. That was the last time I talked to Kelly, the day after Thanksgiving. That's when I found out Luke had a new number. Kelly quickly brushed me off by saying she was busy and would call me back, but she never did, I said. I tried calling daily for weeks until I finally got a message. Ironically, though, they blocked me everywhere but Facebook. I found out later that Kelly was busy because she was going to a Black Friday sale with you and Grandma Roberts. It's simple, I didn't tell them about our divorce. I was going to do it earlier, but I couldn't. When you left, I visited them the following weekend to talk about it face to face. That's when I realized how bad Mom's condition was. Dad had mentioned her forgetfulness, but it had worsened considerably since I'd last seen them at Christmas. And you didn't know because you couldn't come with me for 3 years before that. A year later, I told him the truth. The next morning I found him in his favorite chair with a picture of the 4 of us still wet from his tears. Yes, our divorce broke his heart. You know, Mom and Dad were married for 52 years. He was old school and expected us to stay married until the end. It was at the funeral that I suddenly realized how alone I was in this world. It was just me, the chaplain, and a couple of their neighbors who came to say goodbye. I couldn't even bring my mom with me. She didn't even know what was going on. A week or 2 after I explained to my mom that he was gone, as soon as she came to her senses. But I couldn't see her agony every time she heard it, so now I just said he was gone. Miranda was already sobbing a little, but I didn't have any more tears to cry. I was emotionally drained. My gaze stopped on the lone greeting card on the mantelpiece, and Miranda seemed to notice it. I continued in the same neutral tone that was probably the only one possible. Mom doesn't even recognize me, but I owe her a debt of gratitude for bringing me into this world. So yeah, I'm going to take care of her, however much time she has left. It's amazing to see such emotion from your actions and how they've affected so many people. You ruined our marriage, you ruined my relationship with my children, and you ruined my family. I finished bitterly. I promised I wouldn't show it, but I couldn't help myself. I refused to take all the blame for that, Miranda parried angrily, adding that Dan remained loyal to her. And let's not forget that you betrayed Sandy Thompson and me. Her words didn't elicit the expected reaction. Instead of getting upset, I laughed, tears streaming down my face. Ah, yes, Sandy Thompson, the reason for your 15-year revenge. You made it clear that I couldn't even mention her name, threatening to leave me and take the kids if I did. That ship has sailed. I never touched Sandy Thompson. I yelled back as I woke up in her bed, still wearing the same tuxedo I had worn that night. Nothing happened. Do you expect me to believe that? Miranda yelled back. Of course I believe it. I've never lied to you before, and I'm not about to start now, I replied, calming my voice, regaining my composure. Fine, she replied with her tone resembling more of a teenager than the mature woman I was married to. Her answer bothered me for some unknown reason. I could tell she was still doubting me, and for some inexplicable reason it was important for me to make her believe. I grabbed my phone, turned on the speaker, and dialed my former office. Reaching Jane, the receptionist, I asked, "Hey Jane, it's Alan Doe." "Oh, hi Alan. Are you ready to move?" "I've missed you here for a week," Jane said sincerely. "Yeah, everything's packed. Just meeting up with an old friend before I hit the road. Hey, I'm trying to get in touch with a former coworker from the Little Rock office. I don't know if she's still there. Could you check to see if Sandy Thompson is here?" "Alan, hold on a second," she returned after a brief pause. "Yes, she's still here. Do you need her number, or should I put you through?" "Thanks, Jane. Just put me through and take care of yourself. If Paul decides to ask a question, remember, I'm waiting for an invitation." "We will, Alan. Don't forget about us here," Jane said, grinning before connecting the call. Miranda's facial expression had deteriorated, but now she was fixated on me. "Hi, this is Sandy speaking." Sandy answered, "Hi Sandy, this is Alan, sent from the office in Granville. I'm not sure if you remember me." "God, I've been dreaming about you for years. The man I wished for but never got," she replied, chuckling. How's it going? It's almost like telepathy because I've been thinking about you lately. It must have been 16 years since we last spoke. Although I've seen you a few times in meetings, we never had a chance to catch up. You know how hectic these events can be. It was actually 17 years ago, though I have to admit I don't remember much from that night, I said, chuckling in response to her words. Oh, you were so rebellious that night. What do you remember? A smile came into her voice then. Okay, I remember getting off the stage and the champagne on the table, but after that things got a little hazy. That was the first and last time I ever got drunk, I admitted. She laughed upon hearing my answer. And you were really drunk. I have to admit I had my eye on you that night, although I'm sure I had competition from all the single ladies present. A tall, dark-haired, handsome man like you was attracting attention left and right. When I finally got you out on the dance floor and felt how strong you were, I couldn't help but swoon. Even though I was called Mary all night, it was a little unsettling. It made me realize how dedicated you are, but you only made it to 11 before you passed out in the chair. By the time it was finished around 12:30, everyone had gone to their rooms except you. So I called the night porters for help. The main problem was that no one knew your room number. The hotel computers were offline due to updates. Electronic key cards revealed little. The only solution was to get you to my room, which was quite a feat considering your size. I have to admit, I was a bit mischievous, she admitted shyly. I accidentally touched you while we were moving you onto the bed. It was only a brief touch, but it confirmed for me that you are well endowed. You didn't even move during the entire ordeal. In fact, you remained completely unconscious. Anyway, fueled by alcohol and desire, I stripped naked and fell asleep next to you, hoping to seduce you. Apparently it didn't work, because when I woke up, you were gone, and no one saw you for the rest of the weekend. All I can say is that your wife is a lucky woman, Sandy said. Marie sat with her arms around her head, trying to realize the magnitude of her actions. I couldn't muster any sympathy, given that it was her own choices and assumptions that had led to this situation. Her calculated efforts at revenge over the years opened her eyes. I didn't actually know she was now my ex-wife, and knowing what I know, I should have accepted your offer, I replied, chuckling. She laughed back. Well, about 7 years too late if you were hoping to reconnect. I'm now happily married with 2 wonderful children. I still use the name Thompson professionally, but now it's Sandy Roberts. I met Robert 8 years ago, and he was the first person after you who could get through my defenses. Mary's demeanor suddenly changed, her face contorted in pain. I was puzzled by her reaction as she continued, "You came to mind because of Rob, isn't that strange?" She grinned. "His older brother Dan is getting married soon, and the wedding will be at your place. And his wife, Andy, shares your last name Doe. I wondered if she was related to you, since you're the only Doe I've ever known." Suddenly Miranda's response made sense to me. I don't remember having any relatives named Andy. The only Andy I remember was in high school and hated the nickname so much she threw fits. She was afraid of being mistaken for a boy. I mentioned it, glancing meaningfully at Miranda. She looked visibly ashamed. No one could mistake Andy for a boy. She's amazing. She also has great kids, Kelly and Luke, who are both in college now, she continued. Kelly and Dan's daughter, Cassie, are good friends with my daughter. They share a room in Florida. They were bridesmaids in my wedding, and Luke was Rob's assistant. We have crossed paths with them several times during Christmas and Thanksgiving over the years. Rob mentioned that they had been seeing each other from time to time for 13 years. That brief remark told me a lot. It indicated that her parents were aware of the situation and had her back when she wasn't around. I called them and they apologized until Mary called back shortly after. Honestly, I don't think they should get married because it seemed doomed from the start. Why do you say that after being together for so long, they're both inveterate cheaters? I asked. I mean, Dan cheated on his first wife Lisa with Andy, and it's baffling how he manages to do that because Lisa was incredibly attractive too. I've only seen pictures of her, but still. I told Andy about it once, and she explained that her husband and kids agreed that she had a workaholic husband and a stay-at-home husband. She divided her time between the two, and apparently her husband had similar arrangements with one of his co-workers at the workplace, she replied. But Dan continues to see someone else while with Andy. It's an ongoing thing. His current lover's name is Tilly, and he meets her when he is in Chicago. According to Rob, Dan travels to Chicago every couple weeks for work. They wouldn't even be married if Dan's bosses hadn't forced him to legalize his relationship with Andy. It all started after her house husband sued their company after their divorce. It turns out that her ex-husband didn't share the same understanding of their arrangement. Rob mentioned that the company had to pay a whopping $600,000 to settle. Dan was given an ultimatum: fix the situation or get fired. That's not the strongest foundation to start a life together, wouldn't you agree? Dan is still cheating, and his employer is forcing him into marriage, Sandy added. This is exactly the same situation as Mary's. Mary, upon hearing this, rushed into the bathroom screaming in terror. It was understandable. Her entire perception was shattered. The honest and loyal Dan she knew had turned out to be a fake. But that didn't bother me anymore. I continued talking to Sandy for a few more minutes. She shared stories about her children and I about what lay ahead of me. I found a new job in the insurance industry through a recommendation from my current company. Located near my mom's house, they offered me a work-from-home job doing investigations. The salary won't match my current income, but it will be enough for my needs. It will come with an office and an assistant, I told them. When Sandy finished talking, Miranda returned. We exchanged phone numbers and promised to stay in touch. She looked worse for wear because her face was pale and her makeup was smeared or completely gone. She seemed to have aged very quickly. "I'm sorry," she said, and I believed her. "So am I, Miranda. I have to be on my way by morning. It's a 6-hour drive, but I knew I'd make a few stops along the way. These boxes are yours, all the pictures, clothes and things you left behind. I was going to have them sent next week, but since you're here, I can help you load them into your car if you want," I said. "Can I ask you a huge favor?" she asked, unable to meet my gaze. "Can I stay here tonight? I just can't bear the thought of going home right now." I thought for a moment, then tossed my keys on the table in front of her. "Why not? Make yourself at home. Just don't forget to give the keys to the realtors," I said. "The deal goes through next Monday, so you have 9 days if you need them. Someone will come on Sunday to haul the rest of the stuff to the dump and clean up the place. The utilities will be running until Monday," I added. "Take care of yourself, Mary. I really have to run." As I was leaving, I furtively glanced over and saw a broken woman sitting at a table.
Thank you so much for watching my video and your time. Please subscribe to my channel and click on the bell button. Also, I am very interested to know your personal opinion about this story. You can write it in the comments. I will definitely read it and reply to you personally.